Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Scriptly Adapted. I'm your host, Keely Howard.
And Kate Knowles.
Followed by Kate Knowles. Today we are going to do probably one of the best films I've seen all year.
Yeah.
Lincoln, directed by Steven Spielberg. It's not really about Lincoln's life. It's more about Lincoln's decision leading to his decision to emancipate the slaves.
The aspect that we want to focus on today is Lincoln's relationship and his interaction with the fellow characters. We've picked four that we were really influenced by and moved by, not just the performances, but the relationships.
The relationships, yeah.
We want to share those with you. The first relationship that we want to get into depth with is the relationship and the interaction between Lincoln and his wife, Mary Todd, who's played by Sally Fields. And just so you know, Lincoln is also played by Daniel Day-Lewis, one of the best actors of our time, really.
Definitely.
Not really of our time, but you know. So basically, you know, most of you probably are not aware, but they had a son. Mm-hmm. And they had three sons, and one of their sons.
I did not know they had three sons.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. I know they had Robert Lincoln, but I didn't know that they had a young one. Mm-hmm. They had three sons. One of them passed away. So
very early.
He got sick, and you know, in those times there was nothing really you could do. Mm-hmm. So they lost their son, and it really tore their family apart. And, you know, Mary Todd Lincoln is hanging in there as much as she can to support her husband through trying to get the 13th Amendment instituted to emancipate the slaves. While she's trying to be supportive to her husband, she's also still mourning the loss of their son.
Yes.
So you see that as a huge weight on her shoulders, intensified by the fact that their older son, Robert, who comes home from college, decides he wants to enlist. Mm-hmm. And Lincoln gives him the okay to do that. And so she's extremely upset with him because she's afraid that they're going to lose another son.
Yes.
And there's a scene with them in the bedroom. And I have to say, Sally Fields is an amazing actress anyway.
Amazing actress.
But you felt her anguish. You felt a mother's anguish in that scene. And she was on her knees basically groveling to Lincoln, like, please don't do this. And then it switched, and she was no longer begging, but she got nasty. She was like, this is going to be on you if he dies. If we lose another son, this is going to be on you.
Because the pain of losing another son, she doesn't want to go through.
Right.
Especially during the Civil War.
Right, exactly. And, you know, the Civil War was the bloodiest war of our time. Of our nation's history. So watch Daniel Day-Lewis act and portray Lincoln in exchange with his wife was extremely gratifying, because you always read in history that Lincoln was a very calm and very troublesome man, but very calm and very quiet and a sweet man. And Daniel Day-Lewis had it pegged, and you see him start out the conversation with Sally Fields' character very slow, very calm, trying to reason with her, and then
almost
as the emotion,
politician-like.
then as the exactly, and as the emotion intensifies, you see him get so deep. You see the anguish of him losing a son, because throughout the movie you just see Mary Todd being in grief, and he's kind of holding it in, and he's like, and he says something very interesting. He says, I had to hold it together because I knew how bad you were suffering, and I couldn't allow myself to feel as badly as you were feeling, because we both would have been a wreck. And I think that goes to show how Lincoln deals with it. That exchange was one of the most dynamic scenes in the movie. And it really shows you the dynamic that they have, because the end scene, one of the end scenes, is them riding along in a carriage together, and they're talking about what they're going to do with their future. And obviously, as we all know, he didn't make it. But you see that they really did love each other, and, and it made them come together closer, grieving for their son. Another interaction that we had that was very powerful, Gloria Rubin, plays Elizabeth Keckley, and she was a former slave that was, I guess you could say, employed,
servant employed by the president.
Yeah, employed by the president and Mary Todd Lincoln to kind of accompany Mary Todd to like outings and gatherings and stuff like that. And there's one scene where they're coming back from an event or a hearing, and Lincoln is on the porch with Gloria Rubin, and he's talking to her, and he's saying to her, what would the 13th Amendment mean to you? and she tells the story of her son who was fighting in the Civil War, who was black, and who dies. And she says, you know, this would be not for me, but for him, because he was fighting for our country. So to see that our people be freed, his death wouldn't be in vain. And it was one of the most moving conversations in the movie because you see the respect that Lincoln has on his face for her. He sees her as a human being. And knowing that he's trying to implement the 13th Amendment, that humanity, that sense of humanity is extremely important.
And also you can see the respect that she had for him. As not just the president, but as a man who is trying to pass this emancipation. And who's even taking the chance to even do this, even during this time. I mean, of course, it was the 1800s, I believe, right? And it was no such thing as anybody standing up for slave rights or having to abolish slavery. So you could see that scene was well done, well crafted visually, but also as far as the emotion.
It was definitely a moving scene because, you know, here's someone who's a representative. She's one of the closest people to Lincoln, and she's telling him what it would mean as not only a black woman, but as someone who's lost her son fighting for this cause in the first place. The third interaction that I really loved was, and it actually is the only interaction that lasts the duration of the movie, as far as I noticed, was Lincoln's interaction with his son, his youngest son, Tad. And his name is Gulliver McGrath, and he played Tad, and you just see this softness and this lovingness that comes from Lincoln, even more so toward his son, because he doesn't have that kind of reaction with his son, Robert, who's the eldest. He kind of is a little harder on him. But there's a scene in the beginning of the movie where Tad is laying asleep on the rug in front of the fireplace. And Lincoln goes in there, and next to Tad on the floor are two miniature portraits of slaves. And what Tad has been doing... Slave children.
Were they his friends, or didn't they live in the house?
I don't know if they lived in the house, but I think he knew them. And you see him trying to understand... He's like almost obsessed with them. He's almost consumed. You see him, and Lincoln asks one of his assistants or attendings to take away the portraits because he's afraid it's going to give Tad nightmares because of how they're treated. And you almost see you know that it's very important because you see Tad wanting to know more, wanting to learn more about what's going on, and that just goes to show you that children absorb everything. And Lincoln has a soft spot for him because while he wants to protect him, he wants to secure the future for this boy. He wants to make sure that this boy lives in a fair world. There was one other character that we wanted to review, and this, I think, to me, is the most pivotal relationship in the entire movie, interaction rather. There is an assistant that helps Lincoln. He's there. He takes care of him. He makes sure he always wears his white gloves when he goes out. And his name the actor's name was Stephen Henderson, and he played Slade. And Slade takes care of Lincoln. And at the end, one of the end scenes is Lincoln leaving to go to the Opera House, the infamous, where he got shot. And you see Stephen Henderson standing in the door, and it was an interaction all in itself, even though there were no words. He just watched him walk down the hallway, and you see in his face of what this man means to him and what he means to his contemporaries.
But also, I got the feeling that Slade almost knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, it was almost kind of like
because the tensions were rising between everyone in this whole, the whole slave and emancipation situation. It's almost an admiration look, and
a goodbye kind of.
And a goodbye.
Right, and to me, I think it was one of the most beautiful moments in the film. It was so full of emotion. It brought me to tears, and it was so full of emotion to see that what this man had done benefited so many people in so many different ways. I think Daniel Day-Lewis has it in the bag for Best Actor. I really do, and we're going to be doing an Oscar show too next week, so stay tuned for that. What did you like?
One that I enjoyed about the film was the cinematography.
Yeah,
it was filmed.
It was beautiful.
Filmed and edited beautifully. I thought the shot selection was great.
Yeah.
It's Steven Spielberg written all over it. I mean, that's stylized. He's very stylized. You know a Spielberg film when you see it.
So that's our review for Lincoln.
That's Lincoln.
Yeah.
In a nutshell. Join us next week. Hope you guys enjoyed. Keep watching. Keep enjoying. And we'll see you next time.
Stay tuned, guys. Bye.
Later.